Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel from Evelyn and Peter, and I'm here with another crochet tutorial for you guys, and it is a cardigan this time, which is my absolute favorite to make and to share with you guys. I know how much you guys like cardigans as well, and this one is super easy, and it uses a new Lion brand yarn called Sherpa Fleece. And it's a jumbo weight yarn and really fun to work with. So this is the cardigan. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on for you guys so you can see what it looks like. Should have had this on beforehand, but oh well. So it's super, oh gosh, I don't know if I can scoot back far enough for you guys to see how long it is. Okay, let me move my chair. So it's super long and cozy. It has these side slits, which are optional in the pattern. Super bulky. Here, I'll pull down the yarn and show you the yarn. So this is what the yarn looks like. Let's see if it focuses. I don't know why this camera doesn't focus. So Go for Fleece Sherpa. I used the color caramel for mine, but they have lots of cool colors for this, and it's just really soft. Here's the up close shot of it, and all of these panels are worked in single crochet from the bottom up, and then there's just a little bit of seaming that you have to do. It's not too bad though, and it's actually really simple with this yarn. This goes by like it's really quick. So making this pattern, I use a 15mm crochet hook, so using a big hook and then jumbo yarn, so it works up really quickly. And for the size small, which is what I'm wearing now, you will use just over 5 skeins of this, so you'll need 6 skeins for the small. I have all of the yardage available for all of the sizes on my written pattern, which is available on my blog, and I'll link that in the descriptions. So I have sizes extra small through 5X, and then in this video I'm making the size small, so just be aware of that if you are making a different size, you will want to follow along with the pattern so you can keep track of your stitch counts and your row counts, because they will all be slightly different depending on what size you make. And then again, each panel, you're going to be working 5 separate panels. So the back panel, 2 front panels, 2 sleeves, worked from the bottom up, all in single crochet, and then you just seam them together and then do a quick trim around here. If you want your cardigan to be even bulkier than mine, so this yarn is super heavy and thick, so it kind of pulls downwards. So if you don't want your cardigan as long, I recommend just leaving some rows out of your front panels and your back panel. Just make sure you take out the same amount of rows. If you want it longer, you can add rows. I think it'd be really cute in a cropped version. I hopefully have plans to make a cropped version of this soon. If you want it to fit baggier, then I recommend just following a size up from what you normally follow. The size charts and everything like that are in the pattern as well. I think that's it for this pattern. It's really simple, and the only tips that I have for you guys is to make sure that you follow the stitches with your fingers and feel your stitches. It's very similar to homespun yarn and a boucle type yarn, any fuzzy yarn where it's hard to see your stitches and you need to feel. And it's not too difficult because the stitch count is very small since the stitches are so large. So it's really easy to just move along as you go and feel the holes of the single crochet stitches as you work. And it's super easy to just count in your mind as you're going to make sure you have the correct amount after every row. And on the back panels and front panels, there's no shaping, so your stitch count will stay the same throughout, so you'll be able to see if you are on the right track, and just keep your stitch count the same. And then on the sleeves, there is some shaping obviously, but it's just some increasing, and which is really simple. You're just adding an extra stitch on the ends of the rows, on the increase rows. So just be aware of that, to just try and count your stitches by using your hands and to feel it instead of trying to see your stitches, because it is difficult to see your stitches. And then if you have a hard time counting the rows, you can feel going down like this, and I'll show you in the video, but you might want to keep track by either writing it down or just using a row counter if you think that you'll have a hard time going back and checking that. But other than that, that is about it for this pattern. I hope you guys like it, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. And then as always, this is available as a Lion Brand kit, so you can get that on their website. It comes with all of the yarn, and the digital pattern is included, and then I also have the PDF patterns on my Etsy and my Ravelry shops, and then of course the free version is on my blog, and I'll have that all linked for you guys down below. But I hope you guys like it, and I will catch you guys next time. Okay, so you're going to need some Lion Brand Gopher Fleece Sherpa yarn. This is a jumbo yarn. It's 100% polyester, and I'm using the color caramel. And then all of the skein and yardage amount that you need for your size is all in the written pattern, so be sure to go check that out so you know how many you need. And then you're also going to need a 15mm crochet hook. And then you're also going to need a needle to weave in your ends, some scissors to trim those, and then you will also need a measuring tape. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you guys how to work up one of the front panels. All of the panels are exactly the same. The only difference is the amount of chains in the front panel versus the back panel. So I'm just going to show you guys how to do this with the front panel. And for the size small, you are going to be chaining 12. So go ahead and yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook a total of 12 times. And then the second front panel will be exactly the same as this one. And then the back panel, the structure and the way it's done is exactly the same as well. The only difference is the amount of chains that you will chain in the beginning. So for the back panel in the size small, I chain 26. So just to let you guys know, I'm just showing you the front panel. So here is the chain 12, and then you can feel with your fingers the second chain from the hook. You're going to work one single crochet into that second chain from the hook. And then again, move over and feel with your fingers the chain right after it, and go ahead and work a single crochet into that one as well. And then again, in the chain right after it, you're going to have to feel these stitches with your hands because they're difficult to see with the fuzzy yarn. So just feel your way down the starting chain and work one single crochet stitch into each chain all the way down. So depending on what size you're making, you will have a different stitch count than me. I will end up with 11 single crochet stitches after this first row. We are in row 1 of the front panel, and I'm going to be ending up with 11 single crochet stitches. So just work one all the way down the chain. If you find it hard to keep track of that last chain, you can always have a stitch marker placed into it to help keep your spot, but I found it pretty simple to just feel the stitches, and because it's such a low stitch count with this yarn, I was able to just keep track of how many single crochet stitches I did. So you can see I'm coming up on that last chain there. So I'm going to work my final single crochet stitch, and I have a total of 11 single crochet at the end of that first row. And then you're just going to chain 1 and turn your work. So we have 1 row complete, and that is literally all we are going to be doing for the rest of this panel is chain 1, turn our work, and then work 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So you can go ahead and feel your way again. You can see then I'm putting my finger through every single crochet stitch as I go. And so you can kind of feel the front and the back loop of that single crochet stitch. And if you look closely, you can see it as well. But I just found it easier to just feel as I went. And I'm just moving along, working 1 single crochet into each stitch across. The single crochet stitches, because they're so large, you can feel the hole that's underneath the loops. So it's pretty simple to go along and then just count your stitches as you go. So again, just work 1 stitch into every single stitch all the way across the row to complete row 2. Okay, so once you get to the end of the second row, you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work, and then throughout the rest of the front panel you are just doing a row 2 repeat. So you're just going to be working 1 single crochet into every stitch all the way across. Your stitch count will stay the same. There's no increasing or decreasing, and again, just feel your way as you go. And then depending on what size you make, you will be having a different row count. So make sure you refer to the pattern and see how many rows are required for your size that you're making. I'm making the size small, so I will work up 38 rows. And then again, if you want your cardigan to be shorter or longer, you can just take out rows or leave rows in. So you can make it any length that you desire. Just make sure if you are making it longer that you will need extra yarn, so take that into account. But just go ahead and chain 1, turn 1 single crochet in each stitch across, and then repeat that for a total of 38 rows, or the rows required for your size. Okay, so now I am at the end of the front panel. I have a total of 38 rows, and this is what your sweater should kind of look like. It will be either wider or smaller than mine depending on your size, but when you get to the end and you've either added or taken away rows, if you've wanted to adjust it, you can just go ahead and yarn over and pull that yarn through the last loop on your hook, and you'll want to leave enough yarn for your tail so that you can seam the top of the front panel to the back panel. So go ahead and just leave extra yarn like I did here, and then cut your yarn, and then you need to go back and make a second front panel. So I have already did that, and if you haven't, you can go back now, rewatch the video if you need to, and make the second front panel exactly the same as the first one. And then after you've done that, you are also going to need a back panel. So the back panel is exactly the same as these 2 front panels, but your starting chain is a different length. So for the size small, you will chain 26 and then work rows 1 through 38 and have a total of 25 single crochet for your stitch count. You can see my back panel here. So if you haven't done yours yet, go ahead and pause the video and then refer to the written pattern to check and see how many chains you need, and then start that chain just as you did with the front panel, and continue with your chain 1, turn 1 single crochet in each stitch across for your back panel. So it's exactly the same, just a different width than the front panel. If you adjusted your row count, go ahead and make sure that you do the same thing for your back panel as well. So if you made 36 rows instead of 38 for the size small, just make sure you adjust that for the back panel as well. And then when you get to the last row, you can go ahead and tie off. You don't need to leave any extra yarn on the back panel, just make a short little tail, and then I will show you guys how to seam these panels together and make the sleeves. Okay, so once you have your back panel and both front panels made, I'm going to show you guys how to seam the shoulders up here at the top of our panels. That's what we left the 2 long tails on the front panel for. So normally in my patterns, I have a right side and a wrong side of our panels, but for this one, it really doesn't matter too much because you can't see the stitches because of the fluffy yarn. So what I did was just laid my back panel out in front of me. You can see that the tail is on the left side, and then I took my first front panel and that long tail that I left, which is what we are going to use to seam the shoulder together. I had it so that it's on the outer edge so that I can work my way in. And then I took the second front panel and I laid it out on top the same way so that the long tail was on the outer edge of the sweater so that I could easily count stitches and work my way in as well. This way you know that you are just starting in the very outer corner of the sweater on both panels and working your way in. I just found it easier to count the stitches. So I'll show you how it's done. I'm going to use my hook and the tail of yarn that we left on the front panel to sew this first front panel to the back panel. You can also use a needle if you want and sew across. I just find it easier to do this slip stitch process that I like to do. So what you're going to do is insert your hook into the very outer corner stitch of the front panel, and then find the very last stitch of the back panel as well, and then insert your hook into that one. So we just want to make sure that our stitches are lined up. So it's in the last stitch of both of those panels, And then you can just yarn over and pull through. Make sure you're pulling through both panels. And then what we're going to do is just slip stitch our way across, working our stitches evenly. So find that second single crochet on the front panel and find the second single crochet on the back panel. And then insert your hook into that first front panel and into the back panel. So just make sure you're not skipping any stitches, and then just yarn over, pull through both panels, and pull through the loop on your hook as well. So we just made a slip stitch, and then we're going to do the same thing. Find that third stitch on both the front and back panel. Just make sure you're not skipping any stitches. That's just the only thing you need to look out for. And then just yarn over, pull through both panels, and pull through the loop on your hook. And then make sure you aren't tugging your slip stitches. We do not want super tight slip stitches here because it could make the panels pucker or look wavy. So you're just going to do normal slip stitches, making sure that you're just keeping an eye on your tension and not pulling anything too tight. So just do this all the way across. I will have a total of 11 slip stitches on mine because I have 11 stitches on the top of my front panel. So just work your way across to the very last stitch. And then once you get to the end, you can just yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook to tie off. I ended up having plenty of extra yarn left over in my tail, so you might want to use a little bit less. And then we're just going to do that same thing on the opposite side. So we're going to repeat that exact same thing. Go ahead and take your second front panel and do it on the other side as well. So once you've seen them at the shoulders, you can go ahead and set that aside, and we're going to be working up our sleeves. So again, make a slip knot and then just go ahead and insert your hook, and we're going to be starting down by the cuffs of the sleeve. So make sure that you aren't chaining too tightly here because you don't want it to be too tight around your wrist. So go ahead, yarn over and pull through and make your sleeves. I'm going to be chaining 11 for a size small. So go ahead and yarn over, pull through 11 times if you're making a small, or go ahead and refer to your written pattern for your size because they are all going to be different. And then I also wanted to point out here that if you are making a different size, you definitely need to be following along with the pattern because your increase rows will be at different spots. So after you chain 11, work your first single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and then work one single crochet into each stitch all the way across your starting chain. So you will have a total of 10 single crochet at the end of this first row of your sleeve. So one single crochet into each chain all the way across for a total of 10. Okay, and once you get to the end of row 1, go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. And we're going to be doing the same thing back across for row 2. Just work one single crochet into every single stitch all the way across, and I'll meet you back at the other end of the row. Okay, so when you get to the end of the row, go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. And now for row 3 is going to be the first increase row for every single size. So I'll show you guys how to do an increase row, and when you see your increases for your size, when you look at the written pattern, you will know exactly how to do it. So in this very first stitch, instead of just working one single crochet, we're going to be working 2. So I've worked 2 single crochet into the very first stitch from the row below, and that is our first increase. And then you're just going to work one single crochet into every single stitch across until you get to the very last stitch of the row where we will be working a second increase. So just go ahead and work your way across, and I will meet you back here at the end. And when you get to the very last stitch of the row, work 2 stitches into that one as well. So work one single crochet and then work a second single crochet into the very same spot. This is the size small, and I went from 10 single crochet stitches to 12. So we increased by 2 stitches, and then you can just go ahead, chain 1, turn your work, and work a regular row across. So no increasing for row 4. You're just going to be repeating row 2, which is chain 1, turn, 1 single crochet into each stitch across the row. And after that row 4, every single size splits up to where the increases will be happening different rows. So for row 4, I'm working a 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch across, as well as rows 5, 6, 7, and 8. So if you're making a size small, go ahead and do 1 single crochet in each stitch until you have completed 8 rows total. Okay, so I just finished row 8 for the size small, and those were just 1 single crochet in each stitch across. And now we are going to be doing another increase row. So for row 9 is just a row 3 repeat, which is the increase row. So 2 single crochet stitches into that very first stitch, and then work 1 single crochet stitch into each stitch across until you get to the last stitch remaining. So now we're at the final stitch in row 9, and we're going to be working another increase. So just work 2 single crochet into that stitch, and that completes row 9, and you will have a total of 14 single crochet for a size small. For all the other sizes, you will have increased by 2 stitches as well. And then you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. And then just continue on. For rows 10, 11, and 12, you will be doing a row 2 repeat, which is just 1 single crochet in each stitch across. So go ahead and do that for the next 3 rows. So this starts row 10. So row 10, 11, and 12, just work 1 single crochet in each stitch, chain 1, and turn your work. Okay, so now we are starting row 13 for the size small, and it's another increase row, which was the row 3. So we're repeating row 3 for an increase row. So work 2 single crochet into that first stitch, and then work 1 single crochet into each stitch across until you get to the last stitch remaining. When you reach the last stitch of the row here, work another increase, so 2 single crochet into the same spot. And you will have a total of 16 single crochet after this row, and then go ahead, chain 1, turn your work, and for the next 3 rows just work 1 single crochet into every stitch. So rows 14, 15, and 16, just work 1 single crochet each stitch across, chain 1, turn your work. So do that for these next 3 rows. Okay, so now we are at row 17 for our first sleeve, and it's going to be our last increase row. So work 2 single crochet into the same spot, and then work 1 single crochet in each stitch across until you get to the end. And then in this last stitch here, work 2 more single crochet for our final increase, and you will have a total of 18 single crochet after this row is complete. And then you can just go ahead, chain 1, and turn your work. And for the remaining rows, you're just going to do a regular row 2 repeat, which is just 1 single crochet in each stitch across, chain 1, and turn. So this starts row 18, and for rows 18 through 25, there's going to be no more increasing, just work 1 stitch in each across. And then when you tie off your work, you will want to leave a tail that's long enough to sew the sleeve to the cardigan, so make sure you are aware of that. And once you've completed this first sleeve, go back and make a second sleeve, and then I will meet you guys back here to show you guys how to sew it onto the cardigan. Okay, so at this point you should have both sleeves made, and now I'm going to show you how to attach it to our cardigan here. You can see that my cardigan is laid out in front of me. The seam is facing up, so the right side or the correct side of the cardigan is facing down, and we're just going to be laying the sleeve up against the cardigan and sewing that top shoulder to the front and the back panel. So I'm trying to adjust it here so that you guys can see easily what I'm doing with this huge cardigan on this small filming space. But I have my sleeve here on the left, and then the cardigan is here on the right, and you want to make sure that the center seam where we joined the back panel and the front panel is directly in the center of the top of the sleeve. So you can see my front panel right here, and there's my back panel. Here's our seam where we joined them together, and make sure that that is directly in the center of the top of your sleeve. So you'll just want to line it up so that it's even, and we will be seaming with the same process across, joining our sweater or our sleeve to the sweater. So what you can do to make it easier is measure out the top of your sleeve and then place stitch markers onto the cardigan to make sure that you are lined up as you are going along. You might not have to do this, but I just thought I would show you guys how to do it just to make it a bit easier and to make sure that your sleeves are even. And then once you have those stitch markers placed, you can line it up with your sleeve here and see that it reaches the corner of the top of the sleeve and that everything is even. And so you'll want to keep the sleeve joining in between the space between the stitch markers. So after you have that, you can just go ahead and slip stitch to join with your hook all the way across or use your yarn needle. Okay, so now I have worked my way across the top of the sleeve, and you just want to make sure that you repeat this on the opposite side as well. So you can go ahead and either tie off your yarn at this point, or if you want to have less ends to weave in, you can use the same yarn that's connected and start slip stitching down the side of your sleeve or down the side of your cardigan. But make sure you go ahead and attach the second sleeve, and then I will show you how to seam the sides. Okay, so now you should have both sleeve panels attached, and all we have left to do for this part is seam the cuffs to the underarm and the underarm down to the slit. So I still have my cardigan right sides facing, so it's still inside out right now as we are still adding seams. And there's a couple different ways that you can do this. If you still have the yarn attached from where you joined your sleeve, you could just keep going and slip stitch either the underarm to the cuff joining your sleeve, or you could go the other direction and just work down the side of your cardigan, making sure that you stop short of where you want your slit to be. But if you've already tied off, that is no worries. You can just join in new yarn, and then if you used your hook, you can do the same process and slip stitch, or you can use a needle and sew it as you did before. So I'll show you guys how to do that. So I still have my yarn and hook attached from where I joined my sleeve to the cardigan, and I'm just going to go ahead and keep going. Instead of tying off and joining new yarn, I'm just going to keep going with what I have here. If you've already tied off, you can join yours at the cuff of the sleeve, or you can join it at the bottom of the cardigan after you've measured out how much of the trim or how much of the slit that you want. So either way, it doesn't matter. You can just slip stitch to join in wherever you want, and then we're just going to be doing the same process of slip stitching to join. You'll just want to make sure that your panels are aligned up correctly, and I recommend using some stitch markers here if you have trouble with that, or if you're just new to crocheting garments and need some help. You can place a stitch marker into the panels every few rows or few inches just to help keep your place, and then you can just remove them as you go. And if not, just make sure every few stitches you check and make sure that your panels are just lined up. You don't want to be having them one bunched up or get too cinched or anything like that. You just want them to be even. So you're just going to be doing the same thing as before, slip stitching across. If you used a needle, you can use your needle instead and sew it across. But what I did is just use my hook and then the tail of yarn. And because you're not working into the tops of a row, so you're not working into actual stitches, you're just working into the sides of the row. So it might be a little tricky at some spots to put your hook in. But just put the hook wherever is most comfortable to you and easily goes in. And then you just want to make sure that both the front panel and back panel are lined up, and you are just evenly slip stitching as you go. I find it easy to just sandwich the panels together and kind of hold them with my hand, and then you can just use your fingers to find a space to put your hook, and then just yarn over and pull through both panels and pull through the loop on your hook. And again, with the slip stitches, make sure you're not pulling it too tightly. You don't want it to get all bunched up. So just continue this all the way down until the bottom of the sweater. I left about 11 inches, 10 to 11 inches maybe for my side slit. If you don't want a side slit, you can just go all the way down to the bottom of the sweater before tying off, or if you want your slit a little bit smaller, just stop wherever and then just yarn over, pull through and cut your yarn. And if you didn't start at the cuff before for joining, you're going to need to get your yarn and slip stitch to join, and then we will work from the cuff all the way to the underarm. And if you already joined at the cuff previously, you can just go ahead and move on to the next sleeve. If not, just go ahead and slip stitch to join your wrist to your underarm and then repeat that same process on the other side so it's all seamed up. Okay, so once both sides of your cardigan are seamed from the cuffs and the underarms down the sides, we're just going to add a quick trim around the opening of the cardigan. So you can go ahead and turn it right side out. So now our seams are all hidden on the inside of the cardigan, and this is the way that you would be wearing the actual cardigan. And we are just going to do a simple single crochet trim. So down here in the corner of the front panel, which would be the left panel if you're looking at the cardigan, or if you're wearing it, it's on the right side. Right at the very bottom corner is where we are going to be slip stitching to join our yarn. So you can just go ahead and find the very corner stitch and then just insert your hook and yarn over and pull through, slip stitching to join. And then you're just going to chain one, and then in that same spot work one single crochet. And then you're just going to continue up the side, working single crochet stitches evenly up the side of that first front panel. So again, we aren't working into actual stitches, we are just working into the sides of the rows of the front panel. So wherever your hook comfortably goes, if it looks like it's too bunched up or your stitches are too far apart, you can always pull back a couple stitches and redo it, but you're just going to be adding the trim evenly up the side. I worked about one single crochet stitch for each row, but your stitch count does not matter, whatever works out. And once you work up that first front panel, you continue along with single crochet stitches along the back neckline, and then continue down the second front panel. And when you get to the corner down there, you can just tie off. And all you have left to do now is weave in your ends. So you can just use your yarn needle and then go ahead and weave in any of the ends that you have left over. I like to do it at least 3 times back and forth through the yarn, and then just cut off that extra yarn, and that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial.